Imagine this. You're sitting alone in a neighborhood park, watching your 6-year-old daughter play on the swings. It's an ordinary Saturday morning. Children are laughing. Parents are talking. Nothing feels unusual. Then, a little boy you've never seen before walks straight toward you. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't ask if you're a veteran. He doesn't even say hello. Instead, he stares at the old silver army ring on your finger and quietly whispers, "My mom has one just like yours." You smile politely because you assume he's mistaken. After all, the ring you're wearing isn't something you bought online. It isn't a family heirloom, and it certainly isn't common. Only 12 of them were ever made, each one engraved by hand. For the 12 soldiers who survived a classified rescue mission overseas almost 20 years ago. Your name is Daniel Brooks. You're 47 years old, a retired Army medic. 5 years ago, you buried your wife after a long battle with cancer. Since then, your entire life has revolved around one person, your daughter, Lily. Every Saturday, the two of you visit the same park. Lily plays. You drink coffee. And for one peaceful hour, life almost feels normal again. The silver ring never leaves your finger. Not because it's expensive, but because it reminds you of 11 men who never forgot the promise they made to each other. Brotherhood. Loyalty. No matter what happened after the war. The little boy steps even closer. He points at the tiny eagle engraved on the ring. "No," he says confidently. "It's exactly the same." Daniel laughs softly. "Are you sure?" The boy nods. "My mommy kisses hers every night before she goes to sleep." Daniel's smile slowly fades. His heartbeat quickens. That detail was impossible to know. Only the 12 soldiers knew about the tiny eagle hidden inside the ring. No photographs of it had ever been published. No jeweler had ever copied it. Daniel kneels down. "What's your name, buddy?" "Evan." "And where did your mom get her ring?" The boy shrugs. "I don't know. She just says." It reminds her of someone who saved her life. Daniel freezes. Saved her life? Before he can ask another question, a woman's voice suddenly echoes across the playground. "Evan." The little boy immediately turns around. "Mom." Daniel slowly stands. A woman is running toward them through the crowd. Her face is still too far away to recognize, but something about the way she moves makes Daniel's chest tighten. The closer she gets, the faster his heart begins to race. Because somewhere, deep inside his memory, he knows. He has seen that face before. The woman finally reached them. She gently pulled Evan behind her. "I'm so sorry," she said, slightly out of breath. "He talks to everyone." Daniel barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on the silver ring hanging from a thin chain around her neck. Not on her finger, around her neck. Exactly where every member of his old army unit used to wear it whenever they went on dangerous missions. His voice became almost a whisper. "That ring." The woman instinctively touched the necklace. Her expression changed immediately. She looked at Daniel's hand, then at the ring on his finger. For a brief moment, the color disappeared from her face. "Evan," she said softly, "go play near the slide for a minute." The little boy looked confused. "But Mom, please." He nodded and ran off. Now, only silence remained. Daniel finally spoke. "Where did you get that ring?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she asked a question of her own. "Were you ever stationed near Black Ridge?" "In Afghanistan?" Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Almost nobody knew the name Black Ridge. It had never appeared on the news. The entire operation had remained classified. He slowly nodded. How do you know that place?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My name is Emma. You don't remember me, do you?" Daniel searched her face. The eyes, the smile, the voice. Everything felt strangely familiar, but 20 years had changed them both. "I'm sorry, I don't." Emma smiled sadly. "I didn't think you would. I was only 19. I was one of the aid workers your team rescued after our convoy was attacked." Daniel's breathing became heavier. Suddenly, memories he had buried for 2 decades came rushing back. A burning convoy. Explosions echoing through the valley. 6 terrified civilians trapped inside an overturned truck. One young woman, holding the hand of a frightened little girl while refusing to leave anyone behind.
Emma.
Daniel stared at her in disbelief. You survived. Emma nodded. Because you carried me nearly 2 miles after I was shot. Daniel looked down at the ground. I thought everyone made it out. Emma shook her head. Not everyone. You saved my life. But I never got the chance to thank you. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. I was just doing my job. Emma smiled gently.
No.
You gave me another life. And every single day, I've worn this ring to remind myself that somewhere in this world, a stranger chose to risk everything for someone he didn't even know. Before Daniel could respond, Evan suddenly came running back. He grabbed Daniel's hand excitedly. Mom, is he the hero you've been telling me about all these years? Daniel looked at Emma. Emma lowered her eyes and quietly whispered, Yes, he is. Daniel couldn't find the words.
Hero.
He hadn't heard that word in years.
To him.
The mission at Black Ridge had never felt heroic. It felt like survival. Too many good men never came home. Too many names were carved onto memorial walls. He looked at Evan. You really know about me? The little boy smiled proudly. Mom tells me the story every birthday. She says, a brave army medic carried her through fire. Daniel glanced at Emma. She looked embarrassed. I wanted him to know that kindness can change someone's life. Daniel gave a small smile. I don't think I deserve that much credit. Emma shook her head. You've never understood what you gave me. She took a slow breath. After the rescue, I spent almost a year learning how to walk again. The doctors weren't even sure I'd survive. Daniel looked stunned. No one told us. Emma smiled sadly. You weren't supposed to know. The military transferred us home immediately. I tried writing letters. I never knew where to send them. Daniel slowly nodded. Most of us left the service soon after. We all disappeared into different lives. For a moment, they simply stood there, watching children laugh, watching leaves drift across the park. Almost 20 years had vanished in a single conversation. Then Evan asked another innocent question. Mom, can I show him the picture? Emma's eyes widened. Evan. The little boy was already digging through his small backpack. A second later, he proudly held out an old photograph. The edges were worn. The colors had faded. Daniel took it carefully. The moment he saw it, his entire body froze. It was the rescue team, all 12 soldiers, standing beside the damaged convoy. Mud on their uniforms, exhaustion on every face. And there, near the center, was a much younger Emma, wrapped in a military blanket, smiling through tears. Daniel stared at the picture for several long seconds. I've been looking for this for almost 20 years. Emma looked surprised. You have? Daniel nodded slowly. Our unit photograph disappeared after the mission. It was the only picture we ever took together. Emma smiled. I've kept it all these years. Whenever life became difficult, I looked at this photo and reminded myself that good people still exist. Daniel carefully handed the photograph back. Then something caught his attention. In the bottom corner, someone had written a sentence in blue ink. Not all heroes wear medals. Some simply choose not to walk away. Daniel's voice became almost a whisper. I never wrote that. Emma smiled through tears. I did. On the day I finally left the hospital. Before Daniel could answer, his phone suddenly vibrated. It was Lily's school. He answered immediately. Hello. The smile disappeared from his face. What happened? Emma watched his expression change. Daniel's hand began to tremble. Lily collapsed. His heart stopped. I'm on my way. Without another word, Daniel turned and ran toward the parking lot. Emma instinctively grabbed Evan's hand and followed him. Somehow, she knew this unexpected reunion wasn't over yet. Daniel drove faster than he had in years. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Every terrible possibility raced through his mind. Lily was all he had left. After losing his wife, He couldn't bear the thought of losing his daughter too. Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat. She hadn't planned on coming, but when she saw the fear in Daniel's eyes, she simply said, "You shouldn't go through this alone." 20 minutes later, they rushed into the emergency room. Daniel spotted Lily sitting on a hospital bed. She looked pale, but she smiled the moment she saw him. "Dad." Relief flooded through him. He wrapped his arms around her. "What happened?" A nurse stepped forward. "She's stable. It appears she fainted during gym class. But we'd like to run a few more tests." Daniel nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Just then, an older doctor walked into the room carrying Lily's chart. He stopped in his tracks. His eyes settled on Daniel's army ring. Then, without saying a word, he slowly rolled up his own sleeve. A faded military tattoo appeared on his forearm. A small eagle, surrounded by 12 tiny stars. Daniel stared in disbelief. "No." The doctor smiled. "Sergeant Daniel Brooks." "It's been a long time." Daniel searched his face. Then suddenly, he remembered. "Captain Harris?" The doctor laughed softly. "Not captain anymore. Just an old country doctor." 20 years earlier, Captain Harris had been the military surgeon assigned to Daniel's rescue unit. He had patched wounds, saved lives, and buried too many friends. Neither man had seen the other since leaving the army. They embraced like brothers. Emma watched quietly. She suddenly understood something. The little silver ring hadn't just reunited one life. It was reconnecting an entire family that war had scattered across the country. Captain Harris looked at Lily's chart, then smiled. "You picked a good day to bring her here." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "I happen to be the senior pediatric specialist on duty." Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. For the first time that day, hope returned, but only for a moment. Captain Harris's smile slowly faded. "There is something we need to talk about." Daniel's heart sank again. "What is it?" The doctor looked toward Lily, then back at Daniel. "I don't want to alarm you, but one of her blood test results doesn't look normal." The room suddenly fell silent. Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He had survived a war. He had survived losing his wife. But nothing had ever frightened him like the possibility of losing his little girl. And outside the hospital room, Emma quietly closed her eyes, whispering a prayer for the man who had once saved her life. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "What did you find?" Captain Harris spoke carefully. "We're not certain yet, but Lily's blood work suggests she may have a rare autoimmune condition." Daniel looked at his daughter. She was smiling, completely unaware of the fear filling the room. "Is it serious?" Captain Harris nodded slowly. "It can be. But if we caught it early, that's in her favor." Daniel closed his eyes. For years, he had prepared himself for every possible hardship. He learned how to cook, how to braid Lily's hair, how to comfort her after nightmares, how to be both father and mother. But nothing had prepared him for hearing a doctor say, "There may be something wrong with your daughter." Emma quietly stepped closer. Without saying a word, she placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. It reminded him of another hospital, another lifetime, when he had been the one comforting frightened strangers. Now, he was the frightened one. Captain Harris looked through the chart again. "We'll need additional testing. It may take several days." Daniel nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Just then, Lily looked toward Emma. "Dad." "Who's your friend?" Daniel smiled faintly. "This is Emma." Lily waved. "Hi." Emma smiled back warmly. "Hi, sweetheart." Lily looked at Evan standing beside her. "Want to play cards?" Evan grinned. "Only if you promise not to beat me." The two children laughed, as though hospitals had never existed. As Daniel watched them, a strange feeling settled over him. Life had brought two families together, at exactly the moment both needed someone. Captain Harris interrupted his thoughts. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still have the emergency contact card from your army records?" Daniel frowned. "I think it's in an old storage box at home." Captain Harris nodded. "I'd like you to find it." Daniel looked confused. Why? The doctor hesitated. Because 20 years ago, your unit participated in a medical research program after the Black Ridge mission. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. I barely remember that. Captain Harris continued. The program collected rare genetic data from everyone involved. Emma's eyes widened. You mean? Captain Harris nodded. If Lily's condition is what I think it is, those old military records may contain exactly the information we need. Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. The mission, the ring, meeting Emma after 20 years. None of it had been the end of the story. Somehow, the past was reaching into the present one final time. And this time, it wasn't asking Daniel to save a stranger. It was asking him to save his own daughter. Daniel drove home that evening with a single thought in his mind. Find the box. The old military storage box had remained untouched for nearly 20 years. It sat in the corner of his garage, covered in dust. Lily and Evan waited inside with Emma, while Daniel carefully opened it. Old uniforms, photographs, mission maps, letters from soldiers he hadn't spoken to in decades. Then, at the very bottom, he found a sealed military envelope. Across the front were 3 words. Confidential. Black Ridge. Daniel carefully opened it. Inside was a medical report, along with a small memory card. His name, his blood type, his DNA profile, everything the Army had collected after the rescue mission. The next morning, Captain Harris personally delivered the files to the hospital laboratory. Then, everyone waited. The longest 48 hours of Daniel's life. Lily tried to stay brave. She smiled. She joked with Evan. But Daniel could see the fear hiding behind her eyes. Late on the second afternoon, Captain Harris finally walked into the room. This time, he was smiling. Daniel stood immediately. Tell me. The doctor nodded. The military records confirmed exactly what we needed. He looked directly at Lily. The condition was caught extremely early. The treatment has an excellent success rate. Daniel's knees nearly gave way. He covered his face with both hands. Not because he was weak, but because relief is sometimes heavier than fear. Emma quietly wiped away a tear. Evan hugged Lily. I told you everything would be okay. Captain Harris smiled. It will take time, but she's going to be just fine. For the first time in weeks, Daniel truly breathed. Several months later, Autumn returned to the same little park. Lily raced across the playground, laughing louder than ever. Evan chased after her. Emma sat beside Daniel on the same bench where they had unexpectedly met. Daniel looked at his old Army ring, then gently removed it from his finger. Emma looked surprised. You've worn that every day for 20 years. Daniel smiled. I know. He looked toward Lily. For a long time, I thought this ring reminded me of the past. He placed it in his palm. But I was wrong. Emma smiled softly. What does it remind you of now? Daniel watched the children playing together. It reminds me that one act of kindness can travel across decades. You never know whose life you're changing. You never know when life will bring that kindness back. Emma reached into her necklace, removed her own silver ring, and placed it beside Daniel's. 2 identical rings. 2 completely different journeys, connected by one promise. Brotherhood, hope, and a second chance neither of them expected. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the trees, Lily ran over and slipped her hand into Daniel's. Dad, can we come back here next Saturday? Daniel smiled. Absolutely. Because sometimes the smallest moments become the biggest turning points in our lives. Sometimes an old Army ring, a curious little boy, and one unexpected sentence are enough to remind us that kindness never truly disappears. It simply waits until the day it finds its way home.